Uh-huh. I just feel like I've been around the block, ripping up fantasy stock, working around the clock. Look at the view from the top. Researching rookies a lot? No, I just be listening to pods, yeah. One in particular, I'm just a messenger, let me just pass on the rock. Browning, brunning, pruning, pronouncing ain't what he's doing. What he's doing is not losing, but infusing you with new things. And there's Dynasty Bennett, yeah. The man is a menace, yeah. Building a dynasty, some of the finest things. Promise you, you won't regret it. Sly as a fox, cultured in pop. Give him his props. Here is a thought, here is a box, and you cannot compare them at all. So don't even try. Careful with the news, but when you use a take, I take up Tony Fire. I mean Dyer, because anyone else is a huge mistake. Whoa, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, yeah. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Hey, fantasy round table, fantasy round table, woo. Fantasy round table. Come take a look at the crown, baby. Go.
Hello and welcome to another episode of the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast. It is Tuesday and we are diving into the latest news, but we are also going to be diving into Dynasty Wide Receiver rankings, picking up our Dynasty rankings. We're going to go 75 to 51. And, speaking of wide receivers, big couple of days for the wide receivers for the Bengals, both Higgins and Chase getting huge 4-year extensions to lock them in with Joe Burrow. How do you feel about those deals?
It's uncharacteristic for the Bengals to shell out that kind of money, but they're taking the Indianapolis Colts Peyton Manning approach that we're going to try to have just enough defense and the most powerful offense in the league. They've got an explosive running back. They brought back Gesicki, who's a mismatch at the tight end position. And then you have arguably the best wide receiver in the game. And T. Higgins is the number one wide receiver on about 29 other teams in the NFL. So it makes sense. You want to keep your good guys. If what I've read is correct, they have a reasonable out after 2 years with Higgins, and he's a year and a half, 2 years older than Chase. So when it comes time to make some more moves after a couple years, we all can see the writing on the wall. Higgins is the sacrificial lamb. I don't know, how good do you feel getting paid, $50 million or $45 million less than your running mate? I mean, it's a lot of money. I get it, but the pecking order there. It's Jamar Chase, it's T. Higgins next, and then it's like, well, do we have a running game? Are we, how much work is Chase going to get? I don't think Samaje Perine's a threat. Still got Zach Moss, so Chase will be the guy that they use to put up big plays from the running back. Andre Iosivas is there. We'll see. They have to stay healthy. They need some work on their offensive line, and their defense was awful. If they can, the salary cap is heading towards $300 million. While Trey Hendrickson wants to be treated like the guy that's the best defensive player in the league. He's 30, 31 years old. He's very good, but he's not going to get the big, fat, long contract that he would if he was 25. I think it's a great move for the Bengals. Seems like there's a new era there. We'll see. Can they outscore some teams and get to the Super Bowl?
Yeah, Hendrickson is 30. His birthday's in December, so he just turned 30 back in December. We'll see if, they said at the outset of the offseason that their goal was to get both receivers and Hendrickson. They're 2/3 of the way there, so we'll see if they can make it happen.
Well, it was very convenient that Higgins fired his agent and signed on with Jamar Chase's agent, so they couldn't play the two of them against each other.
Yep. Meanwhile, Kyle Juszczyk was released by the 49ers, who signed him back to a 2-year deal. Probably better for the team than for fantasy. I just thought that was interesting.
I mean, he does what he does. They like him. He plays, I think San Francisco uses the most snaps at fullback outside of anyone besides Baltimore. Probably, I think they do use the most. But he's going into his 10th year now, I think. 4 years in Baltimore, 6 years in San Fran. He's a guy that in a pinch, they could start him in that offense and he's going to put up solid numbers, but he's not explosive. He's a fullback. He's a big guy. Great story. I love it for Juszczyk in San Francisco. Nothing there for fantasy.
Meanwhile, they also traded Jordan Mason to the Vikings. He was a restricted free agent who then signed a new 2-year, $7 million deal. He will be paired with Aaron Jones. I kind of like that deal.
I like it. If he can stay healthy, he provides relief for Aaron Jones, who at 30 years old, and has a history of missing some games here and there. Aaron Jones is a phenomenal back, but I think him and Mason paired together, all they got to do is both of them got to stay healthy, and they'll split I think they split the touches, 55-45, 50-50. And if one of them gets injured, the other one can pick up the load. And if they do that, if they don't have to do that for, 10 or 12 weeks, I think it works out very good and in Minnesota's favor. Jordan Mason was RB10 through week 7 last year, and then he got hurt. And while he, played after that, it wasn't like he put up some 20-point games. I think, where's my thing here? After resort here. After week 7, his best week was 7.8 points in week 13. So, and he missed 5 games through week 17. I don't have week 18 in there, but he had some weeks after he got injured. He wasn't super productive. Guerrero kind of took over. If he can stay healthy, that's going to be the key for him.
Couple of other guys signed deals. Let me know if any of them spark your interest. Juju goes back to the Chiefs on a 1-year deal. Paris Campbell to the Dallas Cowboys on a 1-year deal. Velus Jones to the Saints on a 1-year deal. And then Cooper Rush signing with the Ravens to be their new backup on a 2-year deal. So Dallas had Rush and Trey Lance last year, neither of them on the roster this year. They don't actually have a backup quarterback at this point.
I think at Will Grier, I think. The receivers don't do much. Juju will have a game where he's fantasy relevant, probably a wide receiver 3, and then his knee will flare up. Paris Campbell, God bless the Buckeye, but has just never been able to put it together and stay healthy for any stretch. He's likely to be the Cowboys wide receiver 4 or 5. Velus Jones is a, returner / running back / wide receiver / geriatric. And then Cooper Rush, he's been a backup for a long time for a reason. As far as backups go, you want a guy that you think can keep it together for a few weeks. That's really Cooper Rush's MO. He's not a guy, he's not going to come in week 1 a la Matt Castle and take over for the season and lead you to 10 wins. He's a guy that may go 3-2 over a 5-game stretch. You got to protect him. But he's also going to typically minimize mistakes. Now, on a team like Baltimore, where you've got Derrick Henry and Mark Andrews, the potential is there, but they'll have to do some changing in that offense. Do you buy Cooper Rush running an RPO?
No.
He's handing it off to the back or he's throwing it. He ain't going to run it.
Which is interesting because they had a series of backups that seemed like a style fit for Lamar, and this feels like going the opposite way.
Yeah. But I think too that, they've added to their wide receiver room. They have a much better running game than they've had in the past. Now, given his age, will Henry continue to hold up if something were to happen? He's a unicorn. We're typically checked out on a running back at Derrick Henry's age. Derrick Henry's 6'3" and 250 pounds or whatever the hell it is. He's going to do what Derrick Henry does. And so maybe you tweak the offense and you get rid of those RPOs and you go more traditional, running game to suit Derrick Henry. And you've got Justice Hill, who's a very, very good receiver out of the backfield and provides a nice change of pace. DeAndre Hopkins, Zay Flowers, Rashad Bateman, Mark Andrews, Isaiah Likely. They re-signed Ronnie Stanley. So could they pivot off of Lamar Jackson's style if he got injured? If they've got good coaching, they can.
Well, let's move on to wide receivers. We'd started our dynasty countdown doing quarterbacks and running backs before the free agency hit. Did a little break to cover that the last couple of weeks. And now coming back to dynasty rankings. So we're going to do number 75 to 51 wide receiver, probably one of the deeper positions and probably one of the positions where you use the most players. 75 would only be going a little over 6 deep, and with flex positions and starting 3 wide receivers, the pool gets expanded a little bit. So why don't you kick off and do your 75 to 61?
Well, just before I start, I just want to give this caveat for the listeners. If you need to miss a show, this is probably the one for me. My 51 through 75, I've been moving them around, and we still have several veterans that are free agents, and I'm just not 100% sure what to do with them. And I get it; it's a dynasty ranking, and it's based on like where we sit today and looking out over the next 2 or 3 seasons. But it feels I'm not really comfortable with this group. That being said,
I still think this is better than running backs 75 to 51.
Correct. Definitely correct. So 75, I've got Brandon Cooks. He's a free agent. He's got a history of productivity. Looking forward to seeing where he lands. I think if he can land in a high volume offense that as the wide receiver 3, I would expect him to beat this by 10 spots, maybe. Give you a good wide receiver 6, maybe even wide receiver 5 production. 74, I got Alec Pierce. I really struggled with the Colts receivers. I know Pierce led the league last year in yards per catch, but Anthony Richardson's been bad. And if history tells us anything with NFL GMs, they want their first-round draft pick quarterbacks to get every opportunity they can to prove them right and make them look smart. Now, it doesn't hurt for Anthony Richardson that the other option is Daniel Jones. I think Daniel Jones would be a boost to the passing game in Indianapolis. How big a boost? Well, that's debatable. But I got Alec Pierce at 74, Demario Douglas 73. I expect the Patriots offense to take a step this season under Vrabel. He spent a lot of money on defense in the free agency period. They brought in a lot of guys. I think they may have signed more players than anybody else. They had the most money. I would expect them to invest in the offensive line in the draft. I think they just signed Garrett Bradbury, I think, today, who was cut by Minnesota. For what that's worth, he was, this is his 3rd team now. So I think he's in his 7th or 8th season. But, David Andrews felt like he was kind of pushed out the door there. They cut him, and I think he may be retiring. So they needed a center. Bradbury is as good a center as there is on the market, but they're going to bring in some offensive linemen. 72, Keon Coleman. I could see him outperforming this. I know the Bills can get pass happy, but they spread the ball around a lot. Khalil Shakir is the number one there. Wouldn't surprise me if they bring somebody else in through the draft or through a trade to kind of beef that up. But they've got a really good running game there. 71, Devon Vele. Was he a one-hit wonder? Was last year going to be his best year? Marvin Mims really came on strong. Cortland Sutton really has settled into that number one spot in the Joe Lombardi offense. Will Troy Franklin take a step in year 2 with his old college roommate? There's a lot of questions in Denver. But Vele, I think, has the potential to have a little bit of sticking power, but I don't know that there's a big ceiling there. Number 70, Andre Yosevach. As of now, he's the 3 in Cincinnati, which is going to pass a lot. But he's still the 3 behind Jamar Chase and T. Higgins. And he's going to be fighting for targets with Gesicki, who they brought back. 69, I got Romeo Doubs. What am I going up to?
61.
Okay. 69, I got Romeo Doubs. I like him. It just feels like Green Bay is looking for that alpha receiver. I think they had hopes Christian Watson could be that. I think they had hopes Jaden Reed could be that. I just don't know that they have that guy on the roster yet. And so in the interim, Jordan Love is going to spread the ball around and hand it off to Josh Jacobs a lot. If I'm digging into assets for this passing game in Green Bay, I want Jordan Love and Tucker Kraft. Number 68, I got Gabe Davis. Mostly because he's still there. They've got Brian Thomas, who's the it man in Jacksonville. We'll see what Liam Cohen gets out of Trevor Lawrence. So I like Davis. He's my new MVS, I think, but he's so boom bust. He's going to give you 3 touchdowns one week, and he's going to give you 3 catches the next month. You just kind of learn to live with that. Quentin Johnston at 67. Somebody's got to be the number 2 in Los Angeles right now. I think it's Quentin Johnston over Mike Williams. Wouldn't surprise me if they invest in that position either through free agency more or in the draft. Signing Najee Harris, I think, bodes well for the running game, and they're going to do a little more power running. But Ladd McConkey is the top dog there. Number 66 and 65, I got a couple free agents, Stephon Diggs and Amari Cooper. Just going to come down to where do they land. It still feels like they've got something left in the tank. Diggs, it'll depend on how well he recovers from the injury. All signs are looking pretty good for him. But where does he go? That's going to be the real question. And the same thing for Amari Cooper. I don't think there's really a spot where they could go and be the number 1. I get it. New England probably needs a true number 1, but I don't think these guys have what's left in the tank anymore. 64, Wan'Dale Robinson. He's a safe guy, a slot guy. The quarterback situation there, I don't know what's happening with it right now. Is it Tyrod Taylor who they got? Or is he in the Jets?
Tyrod's a backup for the Jets.
Oh, okay. Because I don't think because Locke is a free agent.
The Giants, the only one they have is DeVito, and that's just because they did the like a tender.
Yeah. So Wan'Dale has the possibility to be a productive slot guy. Malik Neighbors is the passing game there. Darius Slayton, they re-signed him. I think they're going to give Slayton number 2 volume just based on what they paid him. They gave him $10 million a year.
More than that, it was 36 over 3, so 12.
So that's a pretty good contract. I don't think they're paying him that to be the wide receiver 4. So, but I got Wan'Dale Robinson at 64. 63, another free agent, Keenan Allen. it'll be interesting to see. There's lots of talk that, they should bring him back to the Chargers. I don't think that's what's going to happen. But when I look at, some of these free agents that are left, it feels like Keenan has the best opportunity to go and carve out a role quickly in the slot. He's not going to run away from people, but he could be productive in the red zone and with some volume. Number 62, I got Marquise Brown. I really wrestled with the Chiefs wide receivers because you've got Rashee Rice coming off of an injury, waiting for some legal stuff to be resolved. Xavier Worthy looked great. He kind of outplayed his bad hands reputation coming into the league. I was really impressed with Worthy, but I just don't know, what's going to happen there. I think it's clear that Rashee Rice, Marquise Brown, and Xavier Worthy are the top three. They all can do some similar things. They've got a lot of speed. It feels like Travis Kelce's winding down and he's going to be more inconsistent, but it feels like too that Mahomes isn't going to give up on Kelce. So there's going to be some games where he's kind of forcing it. But I could see Marquise Brown significantly outperforming wide receiver 62. Then at 61, I got Jalen Coker. The Panthers are building a team that's built to run. They invested in a couple guards last year. They've got some young tackles. I'm interested to see what kind of step Bryce Young takes. He wasn't half bad after he got back into the starting lineup. It seems like whether it was the time off or whatever Dave Canales has done with the coaching, it seemed to be working. Now, how high the ceiling's going to be for him, I don't know. Coker looked really good. He kind of just came up out of nowhere and really established himself in Adam Thielen's absence. So it'll be interesting this year to see, can Coker maintain that volume with a healthy Adam Thielen and an ascending Xavier Legette?
Yeah, not to mention, I still wonder what else they might bring in there. For me, at 75, I went with Adonai Mitchell. We did not see a lot from him in his first year, but I, like you, it was really difficult to rank all of the Colts receivers because we don't know how it's going to shake out with them, and we also don't know how it's going to shake out with their passing game. They seem to be pushing Anthony Richardson. Will that lead to him taking a step forward? Will we see more Daniel Jones? It feels like a variety of potential outcomes there. At 74, I have Gabe Davis. I think he kind of is what he is. I don't think Jacksonville's done adding to their group. It might be somebody out of the draft. Davis struggled with health last year. I think he's always struggled with consistency. Then I have Tyler Lockett at 73. I know he's a free agent. He's getting older, but I could see him having kind of that Adam Thielen phase of his career. I think he's going to end up going somewhere, which leads me to my next guy, 72. I have Adam Thielen, and I know he's back with Carolina, and he will probably outplay a 72 second place finish this year, but this is Dynasty and looking beyond, and he's now down to that stage of 1 year deals and where can you end up. And while I might use him as a veteran starter on a contending team this year, if you're not contending, he should not be on your roster, in my opinion. I have Dontavian Wicks at 71. I like what we've seen from him in flashes. Green Bay, another group that's really hard to rank their receivers because they could all have value. They could all take a dive in some way. I have Elijah Moore at 70, a guy who's a free agent. He's still younger, I've liked what we've seen in flashes both with the Jets and with the Browns. So a little bit going to depend on where he finds as a landing spot. I have Quentin Johnson at 69. He took a step forward in terms of his production last year, but it's clear he's probably never going to be what we thought he potentially could be when he went in rookie drafts. And it's clear that the Chargers don't think that he's ever going to be that either. Kind of is where he is. Alec Pierce, an interesting guy. I have him at 68. I would have dropped him out of this group going into last year, and then he popped up, and that sometimes was the most interesting of the wide receivers. Was Pittman injured? Was it the passing game? He really stepped back. Josh Downs seemed to be pretty steady, if unspectacular. Pierce definitely holding off. We thought Adonai Mitchell, both the drafting of him and him being on that roster, was going to take Pierce's spot. But at the same time, Alec Pierce going to the end of his rookie deal right now. Is there a compelling reason for the Colts to bring him back? If not, where does he end up? There's still a lot of questions. I have Marquise Brown at 67. I think he still has some upside, kind of like you. It's not a bad fit there, but he has firmly entered territory where he's signing a series of one-year deals too. Had a one-year deal last year, couldn't stay on the field. They gave him a one-year, $11 million deal this year. That's not terrible, but that's not really a long-term commitment either. And we've seen the chaotic way the Chiefs deploy all of their weapons. They brought back Juju Smith-Schuster too. I don't expect him to have a huge role, but you never know. They have couple of tight ends they're mixing in. They got a better pass-catching running back tandem in Kareem Hunt and Elijah Mitchell. Does Rice get a suspension? Does he come back and stay healthy? Does Worthy take a step forward? Do they get somebody else? Just a lot of pieces there. I have Troy Franklin at 66. I understand what you're saying about Vele, but I tend to think based on the way that they've worked on building this team and the way they were doing rotations toward the end of the season, that last year was probably the best we're going to see from Vele, who is also he's already 27. Which isn't ancient, but that's pretty old considering he just finished an undrafted rookie year. I think the signing of Evan Ingram probably hurts him more than other potential players, and they really started getting Franklin more involved. Franklin only had 2 fewer targets than Vele. There just wasn't a great connection sometimes, had a much worse catch percentage, but that really started to come together well toward the end of the season and down the stretch. Has that experience with Bo Nix, was a guy that they actually moved up to take. So I think he has a little bit of a better shot there. I have Christian Watson at 65. This could either be too high or too low. You never know with Christian Watson. Can he stay on the field? How involved is he going to be? Last year, it seemed like he was healthy for more games, but still didn't get much of a target share, so it's hard to feel good about him. I have Kayshon Boutte at 64. The Patriots, everything that we seem to hear is that they keep wanting to find more wide receivers and add them in there. I don't think Kayshon Boutte did enough last year that he would displace, a good free agent or a highly prized rookie. I don't feel as confident about him as another Patriots receiver I have just a little bit higher up. I have Josh Palmer at 63. I think he'll be fine, but he had a nice deal to go to Buffalo, but we've seen, what is the target share and production going to be like for some of those receivers in Buffalo. I have Wan'Dale Robinson at 62. I like him. He's kind of a little PPR machine getting fed in there, but you're right. He doesn't probably have the upside of even Darius Slayton. They have Malik Neighbors there, who's always going to be their number one. And they have a big question at quarterback that is increasingly hard to feel good about. Wan'Dale coming near the end of his rookie deal. Is he going to get re-signed if he has another good year? I think he could. If he goes somewhere else, what does that look like? And then I have Demario Douglas at 61. He's not flashy, but he's been the steadiest Patriots receiver for the last couple of years. And I think he is still going to be kind of a steady possession option for them. So why don't you give us your 60 to 51 to round out this group?
All right. So at 60, I got DeAndre Hopkins. Name value, I feel like he's going to a lower volume passing offense, but he's chasing a ring now. And I think that he's going to do everything he can. I don't know how much I buy Rashad Bateman breaking out. It's Zay Flowers is the guy there. But if Zay Flowers continues to have health issues, then I could see Bateman and Hopkins moving up even further from where I have them. 69 or 59, I got Adam Thielen. He's a possession guy, consistent, gets open in the short area, good in the red zone. Will he stay healthy? He's I think 34 years old now. I like Thielen a lot. I just think we're getting to the point where you're rolling the dice on him. Number 58, I got Darius Slayton. Can't wait for the Giants quarterback situation to get figured out. Slayton has been a guy like he's sort of in that MVS, Gabe Davis kind of boom bust archetype. But they gave him a 3-year extension. To think that I think he was a 5th or 6th round draft pick, and to think that he's on his 3rd contract with the Giants. So to me, that feels wild for somebody that's not a core special teamer and also not an alpha wide receiver. But he fills in the role that they need, the deep threat, the big play guy. And he apparently does all the right things in practice and in the meeting room. Number 57, I got Marvin Mims. I loved his breakout at the end of the year. Super explosive guy. I'm excited to see, can he push it to the next level? Will he be that number 2 in Denver? Can he establish himself and hold on to that position? I do get a little nervous because Sean Payton likes to run the ball with him a little bit, and he just looks so dang skinny that don't break that guy. He's like a weapon on the outside deep threat. Number 56, I got Christian Watson. Really wrestled with what to do with the Packers wide receivers. Feels like we've been talking about it for 2 years. Watson can't seem to stay healthy, but he's the one that's on the team that profiles as an alpha 1 wide receiver. Can he live up to it this year? He's starting to head towards the end of that contract. If he wants to get paid, he's going to have to step up and stay on the field. 66, Jalen McMillan. This is a little dangerous, I think, because of Chris Godwin coming back. You want to always look at, when you look at the average over the course of a season, it can get skewed. So if Godwin misses the first 4 or 5 games, McMillan continues to ball like he was towards the end of last year, but then Godwin comes back and McMillan takes a clear back seat, the numbers are going to be a little bit skewed based on those first few weeks. But I think McMillan has shown that he belongs in the NFL and he deserves to be a top 2 or 3 wide receiver on somebody's team. So I think he's established as the 3 here if Evans and Godwin are healthy. And when they finally decide to retire, he is in position to step up. Number 54, I got Michael Wilson. This is as much somebody's got to be the wide receiver 2 in Arizona. Really the 3 with Trey McBride's volume. So might be a touch high on that. But I like what Wilson does. He's a bigger wide receiver, has good speed. Rashid Shaheed at 53. They brought back Juwan Johnson. Chris Olave is getting healthy, but can he stay healthy? There's a lot of things happening in New Orleans with an aging Derek Carr who's missed a lot of time. It doesn't look like the succession plan at quarterback is playing out the way they hoped it would. Alvin Kamara is getting old. Taysom Hill is going to be cut. feels like they added another wide receiver that I'm forgetting to their team. But Shaheed is so explosive. And
Bellis Jones, if that's what you're.
Yeah, that ain't it. It seemed Rashid Shaheed is so explosive. If he can pull down some consistency, he has the potential to really outperform this number. Number 52, I have Juwan Jennings. He's the 3 in San Francisco, behind Brandon Ayuk, who should be ready to go at the start of the season, and then Ricky Pearsall. I like the Juwan Jennings story, and at some point last year, I kind of was starting to play off like Juwan Jennings is the reason why you want to trade Deebo Samuel, because you want to move the old receiver and keep the young receiver. And then when I looked, they were only like 10 months apart. So that argument didn't hold water. It took Jennings a while to find his spot and his role. And for several years, there was a time when he would make one catch here, one catch there, just a big play, a first down, a touchdown, but he wasn't getting the playing time. He wasn't getting the targets. And last year, when it came time to step up and they needed somebody, he came through, and I think that matters, but I do think he's going to be the number 3. And then a healthy Christian McCaffrey cuts into that. George Kittle's still there. So there's definitely some flies in the ointment to his production. And then number 51, Rashad Bateman. He's the number 2 wide receiver in Baltimore. It's Zay Flowers, then Bateman. But Mark Andrews is probably going to be the number 1 target getter. Him and Flowers are going to go back and forth. So Bateman looked for about a year and a half, 2 years, like it wasn't going to happen for him. And he was a wasted first round pick. And now he's, he came on and he's balling out, and he's earned himself a contract extension that for most of us, when we saw the extension, we were all like, what did he do to earn that? And then he went out and said, see, told you. And he's been pretty good since then. So I think he's a nice compliment to Zay Flowers. Lamar Jackson clearly trusts him. John Harbaugh clearly trusts him. So I got Bateman at 51.
It looks like, to answer your Saints question, they signed Dante Pettis and Velus Jones. They have Cedric Wilson, Bub Means, Mason Tipton. So not a lot behind Olave and Shaheed. Yeah. And it looks like since the new league year came in and they would have had to designate cuts, that they might just be riding with Taysom Hill. He was in the last year of his contract. It looks like he'd have the same amount of cap hit whether he was on the roster or not. So maybe just easier to keep him. For me at 60, I have DeAndre Hopkins, just like you. Curious to see how productive he will be and how he will fit with the Ravens. It feels like we were kind of excited about the move to Kansas City, and he had 1 or 1.5 good games and then was kind of a relative non-factor. So it's hard to tell what, if anything, he has left. At 59, I have Keenan Allen. He actually did look good for Chicago last year. At times, he was probably their most productive receiver down the stretch. Now a free agent, though, he is getting older. I think that matters for Dynasty. Where is he going to land? 58, I have Amari Cooper. I know you had him a little bit lower. I was almost tempted to throw him lower, but he had been so consistent until Buffalo, which I don't know if it was just not a good fit or if something happened. He kind of disappeared. He's been a guy I've heard a lot of people talking about. They're surprised he hasn't been signed yet. So am I. So I don't know what that means. At 57, I have Rashad Bateman. I'm like you. I liked what I saw last year. I thought that was good. He's definitely in the mix there. He and Hopkins are going to be behind Zay Flowers. Probably they use a couple of tight ends, and they are still a run-first team, I think. So, but definitely has some solid value if you held on to him through a couple of lean years. He gives you some weekly flex appeal. I have Michael Wilson at 56. I'm like you, seems to be locked in at wide receiver 2 there. Still waiting for that 4,000-yard season from Kyler Murray. I think we might be waiting till forever. Trey McBride, Marvin Harrison Jr., the top guys there. So Wilson kind of is what he is. 55, a guy that was hard to rank a little bit, Cedric Tillman. He had a 3-game stretch that was nothing short of sensational, but it was a 3-game stretch. He didn't do a lot before that, but they had Amari Cooper, then he got injured, and we didn't see a lot after that. Not a lot of competition right now. It's him and Jerry Jeudy, but also who is throwing them, the ball? Is it really going to be Kenny Pickett? We don't think Watson's going to play this year. Are they going to get a rookie? Would that rookie play, or would it be Pickett? I don't know. Number 54, I have Keon Coleman. I liked what we saw from him in flashes and spurts with Buffalo. It's hard to tell what Buffalo's passing game philosophy is, and I don't want to get too excited because we were excited. We thought Dalton Kincaid was going to be the new Travis Kelce, and not a lot of consistent target share. The only one that seems to get consistent target share there is Khalil Shakir, but I still like the potential of Coleman. They did take him fairly high. He's coming into his second year in the system, see what he can do. I, like you, have Rashid Shaheed at 53. I think he's a good fit there. They definitely are in dire need of weapons as well. I have Darnell Mooney at 52. I think he's a great compliment there in Atlanta. He's got a couple more years left on that deal, playing with Drake London, Kyle Pitts, Bijan Robinson. He's never going to be the sexy choice, but we saw last year he catches volume. He makes the most of his openings. He's very prolific, and that looks like it could be a very robust pass offense with Michael Penix in there as well. And at 51, I have another free agent guy, and that is Stephon Diggs. Not signed, but he actually was looking very good for the Texans before he had that injury. He looked very good at the first part of Buffalo before kind of a scheme personality change kind of took him out. I think he may still have a little bit left in the right situation. Where is that right situation going to be? Does he end up going back to the Texans? That's been talked about. We also don't know, is he a guy that's going to be ready at the beginning of the season? It feels like it's been very quiet about where he is with his injury and his injury progress, but I think he has some upside, so I still have him there at 51. So that ends this first group of receivers. Dennis, a couple questions. Who is your biggest riser in this group?
So again, when I look at my biggest riser, I think back to last year, and I'm like, well, who was not even a consideration down here? And for me, that's Jalen Coker. He came out of nowhere in Carolina. Thielen went down with the injury, and it's like, wait a minute, who is this guy? And I got to be honest, I'm not even sure what college he went to. But he came in, and he just started putting up fantasy numbers and just vibing with Bryce Young. It just all seemed to work, and he seems to have settled into a position. He's going to be one of the top 3 receivers there. What's the volume going to be? Will be the real question. But I think he showed that he belonged. And I would expect Thielen, this might be his last year. If Leggett takes a step going into 2026 with Coker and Leggett as your top 2, based on how I kind of projected in my head, isn't the worst thing in the world. So Jalen Coker's my biggest riser in this group.
Let me ask, so you don't think Carolina's going to add somebody else? Because I'm 100% that they're either going to take one of these other big-name veteran free agents or somebody high in the draft. I do not think it's a lock that Coker's one of their top 3 receivers.
That's a very reasonable expectation. However, based on they have so many needs on defense, and the wide receiver class isn't great this year. So will they take somebody? Probably, but I would expect them to probably take somebody where they took Coker. How often do you expect that guy to come out and have the type of breakout that Coker had as a rookie. So I don't know. Yeah, there are some veterans out there. I could see them going with Tyler Lockett. I could see them going with Brandon Cooks. There's several guys out there. I just don't think that they're necessarily much longer for the NFL.
I don't think Coker was drafted, so I think if they take somebody in the draft, it'll be higher than where Coker was. He was a guy from Holy Cross.
Rest my case.
I think they'll use a first or second round pick. I honestly do. I think they want to put some more weapons around Bryce Young to build up that offense. They've been making some pretty significant signings to fill in any holes on defense. And I think offense is going to become a little bit more of a priority for them because their defense is actually pretty good as well. And they've, like I said, they've been spending some money to go get some of those guys and to go get some linemen. I think they're going to get, but we shall see. My biggest riser, I would say, is I was going the same kind of thing as you, probably Kayshon Boutte, because he was a big name for a while in college that fell off the shelf in terms of draft capital and then had some off the field things and was kind of an afterthought. I didn't even think he was going to make the Patriots roster after they went and took a bunch of receivers, and instead he ended up being one of their better surprises, which is what got it back
putting in work.
Yeah. So, coming back from the dead. Who is your biggest faller?
For me, it's Stephon Diggs. He got, when Houston acquired him, they moved all of the money into last year so they could get out of it. I don't think they expected to keep him after last season. And they had just said, look, we're going to bring in this veteran. Could he have played his way into it? Sure. But then he got injured. Now he's on the free agent market. And of the free agents, I think he's the best one left. And so to have him versus where he was last year to where he is now in my top 75, he's my biggest faller. But I agree with you. He could land in a spot and shoot back up into the top 30.
For me, it's Amari Cooper. Probably a couple of years ago, we had him top 20, and he had a horrendous 2024 season, and now just kind of remains out there in limbo. And it's looking more like he's going to be a guy that gets added to a team post-draft, a team that doesn't find the player they want, which is kind of a big reversal to me. Who in this group, if things broke right, could finish in the top 25 in 2025?
So this is a weird group. I got a couple guys that I like. One's Marquise Brown. He came back and played really well his last couple games after being injured. And somebody has to step up and become the number one. It looked like Rashee Rice was doing that, and then he got injured. And then as time went on, it looked like Xavier Worthy was doing that. And then they just ran out of time. So everything would have to fall right. He's got to outpace those two guys. But I could see him moving up into the top 25. And the other one is Christian Watson. He is an alpha archetype wide receiver that has just not been able to stay healthy on a team that's looking for an alpha wide receiver. If he can put it together this year, he could easily hop up into the top 25.
Yeah. There are a few guys. I think two guys that I narrowed in on. One is Keon Coleman, because we've seen Buffalo have a big wide receiver who has produced top 25 numbers before. I don't think Khalil Shakir is necessarily that kind of receiver, and I think they did get Keon Coleman for that reason. He goes down the field more with him. I just don't know about the passing volume. And the other one I thought of is Cedric Tillman, because I know it was only 3 games, but during those 3 games, he was wide receiver 1, I believe. So, one is definitely in the top 25. We've seen some explosions, but will they have the right combination of passer and his health and opportunities? Those are some questions. And I think that's why guys are down in this range. It would be a meteoric leap, but could happen. Well, that'll do it for us today. We will be back on Friday looking at number 50 to 26 in the wide receiver group. And then we will be back the following Monday. We are going to do a couple of Monday shows here the next couple of months because it's baseball season. And Dennis will be enjoying baseball on
Hey, Coach.
We'll be enjoying baseball with his son on a couple of the Tuesdays. Most of the Tuesdays in April there, we are going to do Mondays, and we will do Monday next week. But we will be back in our normal slot on Friday, and we will be doing the next chunk of wide receivers. Until then, Dennis, if people need something to occupy their time, what can they do?
Go to their favorite podcast platform, hit that search bar, type in the Fantasy Football Roundtable Podcast, give us a subscribe, give us a like, leave us a rating and a review. We appreciate it.
You guys hang in there. Hopefully you don't get blown away the rest of the week. I know we're bracing for blizzard-like conditions tonight. So hopefully I will see you on Friday. Until then, have a wonderful week.